as we practice Vipassana meditation, our aim to attain enlightenment, at least the first state of enlightenment, Sotapaddi fruition. This is our aim when we practice Vipassana meditation. If we haven't attained enlightenment, we are still called Puthojana. Tonight, I would like to talk about Puthojana. The Buddha taught us, do we Puthojana Buddha Dejjena Bandhuna Ando Puthojana Eko Kalyaneko Puthojana. The Buddha taught us there are two kinds of Puthojana: worldling people and enlightened people. Two kinds of Puthojana. One is Anda Puthojana. Another is Kalyana Puthojana. Two kinds. Anda means blind. Kalyana means noble. So noble Puthojana and Anda Puthojana. Here I also would like to explain about Puthojana, because when we translate into English, we just translate an enlightened one or worldling. But there are different meanings about Puthojana. Puthu and Jana, combination of two words. Puthu, many or a lot. Jana, beings. Many beings. What many? When we check ourselves, what do we have? Many things. What do we have? A lot of things. First, we have a lot of defilements. We have listened many times. We understand in the Dhamma, the Buddha mentioned Puthojanas have a lot of defilements. So when we practiced 4 foundations of mindfulness, watching our mind and body, we have experienced many different defilements in our mind. So Puthojana is a person who has many defilements or a lot of defilements. It's called Puthojana. Another meaning is many teachers. We look upon a person who teaches us. So we look at the teachers. So many teachers. Now we also practice under many teachers. So we have many teachers. A person who has many teachers is called Puthojana. Then another meaning is met. Puthojano Omatako. You have listened. Puthojano Omatako. All worldlings are met people. Met about sight, met about sound, met about smell, odor, met about taste, met about touch, met about thoughts. So Puthojano Omatako. All worldlings are met people. This is the meaning of Puthojana. So the Buddha taught us two kinds of Puthojana, Anda Puthojana and Kalyana Puthojana. Anda Puthojana, blind, worldly. What does it mean, blind? A person who doesn't study about the teachings of the Buddha, about the Khanda, group, five aggregates, about elements, four dhatu, about ayatana, sense bases, about the factors, about noble truths, about noble eightfold paths. They do not study, they do not discuss, they do not practice. They are not interested in the teachings of the Buddha. So these four elements, five aggregates, etc. are the teachings of the Buddha. So they are blind about the teachings of the Buddha. So they are Anda Puthojana. Kalyana Puthojana is a Puthojana who are interested in the teachings of the Buddha, who ardently practice the Dhamma in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha. Then they experience this Dhamma, they discuss about the Dhamma, they experience the teachings of the Buddha. It's called Kalyana Puthojana. So we can check our yogis which kind of Puthojana we are. Is it Anda Puthojana or is it Kalyana Puthojana? If we haven't attained enlightenment, the first stage of enlightenment, Sotapatti, fruition, I believe our yogis here are Kalyana Puthojana. We do not know who have attained enlightenment. As our late most venerable Mahasi Sayadaw taught, we have to check ourselves which level of enlightenment or knowledge we have experienced. We have to check ourselves. So we do not know in this retreat who have realized or who have attained the enlightenment. Nobody knows, but only yourself would notice how you have experienced in the Dhamma. But sure, at least we can understand, experience about the Khanda, five aggregates, about elements, about noble truths, about factors of enlightenment, about noble eightfold paths. So tonight, this evening, I will try to explain how our yogis experience these teachings of the Buddha. So you can decide yourself, am I blind worldling or am I noble worldling? You can judge yourself. I do not, but I believe here nobody is blind worldling. When you come here for the practice, at first you listen carefully to the instruction tape. You keep 8 precepts, then you listen instruction tape carefully. According to the instruction, you try to be mindful each and every moment. As you are told many times, you put forth effort, mental energy. Then you try to be mindful moment to moment. You keep your mind on the abdomen. Then note it closely, rising, falling of the abdomen. At the beginning of the practice, you may not be able to note it closely, but with your mental energy, you would follow the movement, the rising and falling of the abdomen closely. When you are able to note the rising and falling closely, you would notice there is motion. At least you would notice there is motion in my abdomen. So this is a noticing I have explained. When you note rising, you notice it inflates. When you note it, you notice it deflates. At least you would notice. So when you note it closely, whenever the rising and falling appear, you notice clearly. Sometimes you feel pushing up, sometimes pushing down, sometimes expanding, sometimes contracting. You notice in different ways according to your mindfulness. According to your mindfulness. So this is your understanding. Your understanding. You are noting the rising and falling very carefully. When the mind goes or absorbs and the rising and falling closely, you have some quality of mindfulness. You have some power of mindfulness. Even though you are noting the rising and falling very carefully, unexpectedly, a knowledge of thinking or awareness would arise in your mind. You just pay close attention to the rising and falling, but unexpectedly you'll be aware some feeling somewhere in your body, maybe your hand. When you practice sitting meditation, you put your hand one top of the other for 1 hour. So you might notice there is warmness in your hand. There is heat in your hand. You are aware of it while you are noting the rising and falling. You just pay close attention to the abdomen, but when the mind is concentrated, you are aware there is heatness. This is a noticing. Then you note heat, heat, heat. Or warm, warm, warm. Closely. Noting it closely, you might discern the other things. The warmness or heat something like you feel hardness. This is a noticing. Noticing is wisdom, knowledge, because you watch your body carefully. Something like there is a stone in your hand or in your palm, you might feel. So hardness, the warmness or heat change into hardness. You do not watch purposely. This is a hardness or softness. You just pay close attention to the abdomen. Because of your concentration, you become aware there is warm or heat. When you note heat or warm, you notice hardness or softness. So your knowledge getting better. So while you are noting the rising falling, not all the times you know the rising falling. What I said you still might remember. Note the rising falling very carefully. It is so important. If you note it closely, your mind becomes broad, open up. How your mind becomes broad and open up, even though you do not note other things, in your mind you become aware. Sometimes the air goes up. Sometimes you mentioned, while I'm noting the rising falling, my arm jump. So I realize, I note suddenly jumping and moving, or the air in your arm. Then you note, you are aware of it. Sometimes the air goes up. When you hiccup, you note it. All yogis experience every morning experience. What do you experience? Do you remember? I think most of the yogis experience. The weather is very cold. He does not switch on yet. So what do we have? Sneezing. Shru. So when you sneeze, then you have to clean up with mindfulness, or liquidity, fluid. Are you aware of it? Sure, you are aware of it. So you notice air element, water element, earth element. You experience. So in this way, you have experienced four elements. So you just know the rising, falling of the abdomen, the wind in the abdomen. There are 6 kinds of wind or air element. We can say special 6 kinds of air element. If you do not study the Dhamma, you will not understand. But even though you do not study the Dhamma, you do not read any Dhamma books, but you have experienced with your practice. You have experienced, I believe, all the 6 kinds of air element. The air which is going up when you are coughing. Do you note cough? Sure, you note. The air goes up. The air which is going down also must be noted. You still might remember, when the cause nature, we have to apply clear comprehension. The Buddha taught. When the nature calls, we have to apply clear comprehension. When you really apply clear comprehension. That is, if you are mindful when the nature calls, you would notice something. The air pressure, the releasing must be noted to understand clearly. Or the air which is going down, the air which is going up. Uddhagama and Adhogama. Adhogama. The air in the limbs, in the hand, in the leg, when you practice walking meditation, when you stretch your arms, you have to notice stretching. When you bend your hand, you have to notice bending. When you move, you have to notice moving. When you get up, you have to notice getting up. When you sit, you have to notice sitting. So you can be aware of air element in the limbs. Sometimes you eat very little in the morning. You practice, you are working with your abdomen, noting it very closely. We can be hungry very fast. The food, what we eat, can be digested easily. Because you take full breath, not rising, falling, rising, falling. In this way, the food can be digested very easily. So if you eat very little, you can be hungry very fast. Not time yet for bell. So when you are hungry, you might hear some sound in your stomach because no food in the stomach. So the sound in the intestine. So you not hearing. When you are hungry, the body becoming weak. This also element, air element in the intestine you have experienced. Then noting rising, falling in the stomach. Then breathe in, breathe out. Breathe out. While you are noting the rising, falling, you might notice, while you are noting the rising, falling, you are breathing. Sometimes the mind goes to the nostril and out, you remember. So the air in the nostril and out breathing, asasa, pasasa. In this way, you have experienced. When you have experienced, you have the knowledge, you have understood what the Buddha taught. 4 elements. There are only 4 elements. No person in the air element, no he or she, no I, if you really could note it closely, no spirit in the rising and falling, no soul in the rising and falling. You really understand with your own mindfulness. Then what you can understand? Noting an object. Let's say noting is the mind note it's rising. The rising is the object, metta, corporeality. Noting is the mind, falling is the metta. So when you note rising, you notice motion. When you note falling, you notice motion, the air. So what I say, noting and noticing. Noticing is knowledge. Noting an object and noticing. In Burmese, matta kali ye, masya kali ye, tira kali ye. 3 မျိုး. Only 3 things: noting, object, and noticing. Noticing is wisdom. Noting is a mind. Object is metta. Noticing is wisdom. Have you experienced what I mentioned now? I hope you have experienced. You have experienced. So if you have experienced, you have understood what I'm talking now about elements. All 4 elements. 4 elements. You have understood. So if you understand, there are 4 elements in our body and mind, you have comprehend clearly. You have comprehend clearly. That's why in the 6 qualities of the Dhamma, you may recite every day. Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandetiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opaneyiko Pachatan Veditapo Vainyuhi. These are 6 qualities of the Dhamma. The Dhamma of the Blessed One is well expounded. The Dhamma of the Blessed One is well expounded. Sandetika, to be realized by oneself. To be realized by oneself. If you practice Vipassana meditation, if you do not practice meditation, you will not realize. If you practice Vipassana meditation, you would realize as it is, really is. ကျင့်ကြံကြိုးကုပ်အားထုတ်လျင်ကိုယ်တိုင်မှန်စွာသိနိုင်တဲ့တရားတော်မြတ်ပါပြီတကားတရားကုံတော်ထဲမှာ If you practice Vipassana meditation, you would realize clearly as it really is. Now, according to the instruction given by the Buddha, you practice diligently, ardently. You do not give up easily. You do not give up easily, as the Buddha taught. Put forth effort. Without putting forth effort, we cannot follow the movement closely. So you put forth effort, mental energy, the moment to moment, watch it carefully, then you don't follow it closely. You notice inflates or deflates. So you realize. So Sandetika, because you practice. If you do not understand, you will not notice. You will not realize. Akalika gives immediate result. Immediate result. So you haven't practiced meditation yet, but you listen the Dhamma carefully. When you listen the Dhamma carefully, with pay attention, at the moment of listening Dhamma talk carefully, you would feel peace. So this is an immediate result. Let's say you haven't practiced meditation, but you listen very carefully. When your mind absorbs in the Dhamma, you do not think any other things, no thinking, no wondering. So very peaceful. If you practice meditation, you are watching your body and mind moment to moment. If the mind doesn't go anywhere, more peaceful, calm. That's why yogis in their report, they mention very calm, very peaceful, my mind is very peaceful. They mentioned. Why they are very peaceful, calm? Because they are so mindful, the mind is so still. When the mind is so still, the body also becomes so still. You could sit, I think quite a number of yogis here, they could sit for 1 hour, still, 2 hours, still, they could sit. Surprisingly, they could sit. So the mind is so still. So you get immediate result. When your practice is good enough, you would experience all the insight knowledges, then you would attain enlightenment. You would attain enlightenment. Santetika Akalika. Ehipasika. The Buddha invites. Worthy of invitation, come and see. Ehi, do come. Pasika, see, watch, practice. I have comprehended thus with my practice. You may too practice. If you practice what I teach, you also would comprehend. You would comprehend clearly as they really are. So the Buddha invites us to practice. Don't believe, don't take my word. Don't believe simply. Don't believe blindly. Practice. Then you will comprehend. Now, during the 2 weeks retreat, you practice diligently, ardently. Then you, just now as I mentioned, you could notice motion, you could experience, you have experienced warm, cold, hard, soft. When you are noting the rising, falling, you also sometimes feel saliva flowing in your mouth. When the saliva is flowing in your mouth, what do? You note flowing, collecting, or gathering. Then you note swallowing. So you note all process of the saliva flowing until the saliva swallowed. So even though you don't say, oh, this is a water element, you experience the water element with your mindfulness. So Sandaitika, Akalika, Ehipasika, you have comprehend according to your practice. Ehipasika, Opaneka, fit to broad to oneself. We ought to practice, we should practice until we gain something, experience something. Then, Pachatan Vedita Po, when you hear, to be realized by the wise. The wise mean not the professionals, the meditators who practice vipassana meditation. In the talk, I have explained Yoga Vichayate Bhuri, the wisdom comes from meditation. So if you practice meditation, if you experience, you are the wise. To be realized by the wise. Each of them. So now you can tell your experience, let's say the 4 elements. Explain to a person who doesn't practice vipassana meditation. She or he may think, what are you talking about? I can't understand, they may say. Because they do not practice meditation, they do not understand. They are just blind, worldly. So, Saddapati fruition, a person attained, cannot understand a person who attained Skadagamihood. Cannot understand. You know, the Buddha's chief disciple, lay disciple, Nathapindika. He had 3 daughters, 1 son. The eldest daughter was Sotapanna. Sotapati fruition she attained. The Nathapindika, he was Sotapanna. He attained Sotapati fruition. The second daughter, Chulasubhadra, also attained Sotapati fruition. But the youngest daughter, Sumana Devi, while she was looking after the monks, she listened Dhamma from the monks. Then, taking care of the monks, she also attained enlightenment. Her attainment was once Ridana, Skadagami, Magapala, she attained. One day, she was ill. She just about to end her life. So her father, Nathapenika, went to see her. When Sumana Devi met her father, she called, "My little brother." Sumana Devi called, "My little brother." Hearing that, Nathapenika was so sad. My daughter, she didn't have any dhamma to depend on for her life. She was so scared to die. She was afraid of death. That's why she called me a little brother. He was so sad. So he went to see the Buddha, tell about the situation of his daughter. Then the Buddha told him, "No, she was right, because you are little brother of her. That's why she called you a little of brother." Nathapenika could not understand. Your daughter attained Sakadagami fruition, one stage higher than you. You are just Sotapatti fruition you attained. That's why she called. So he could not, what I want to say here, we cannot understand what other people experienced, other experience higher. So, Pachatan Vedita Bo, when you hear, so these are 6 qualities of the Dhamma. So, through our practice, we have Sandetika, we have realized, because we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So please repeat after me. You may not have the chance to recite the 6 qualities of the Dhamma. Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandetiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opaneyiko Pachatan Vedita Bo when you hear. Please say again. Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandetiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opaneyiko Pachatan Vedita Bo when you hear. Please say sadhu. In this way, our yogis have experienced 4 elements. 4 elements. If you have experienced 4 elements, you are Kalyana Puthojana. Even though you haven't attained enlightenment yet, you have benefits. These benefits cannot compare with other benefits. If you do dana, you also have benefits. If you take precepts, you have benefits, but cannot compare with other benefits. The benefits of charity, the benefits of sila, morality. This is the benefit of vipassana meditation, vipassana meritorious deeds. Vipassana meritorious deeds. So, in the rising, when you note, could you see any person? You could not see any person. When you note, in the noting, in the mind, could you see any person? You could not see. So you have experienced mind and metta. Discerning about the mind and metta. Noting is a mind. Noting is a mind. The object is the metta. Let's say rising is a metta. Noting is a mind. Falling is a metta. You understand at least only 2 things. Nothing else. Nothing else. You know the rising, falling, closely. Just you note the rising, falling closely. What I say, note the rising, falling carefully, closely. There are so many things we can understand in the rising and falling. The more you note the rising, falling closely, the more you would understand so many things in the rising and falling. At the beginning of the practice, only you could catch most clear part of the rising and falling. You will not have the ability to catch the beginning or end. When your mindfulness getting better and better, you would catch the beginning part of the rising, middle part of the rising, end part of the rising. Beginning part of falling, the middle part of falling, the end part of falling. You would catch. Then you notice very clearly when I note the rising closely, I could catch the beginning, but the movement at the beginning not strong enough. But the movement getting stronger and stronger. The middle part I could see more clearly. Then slowly the motion getting weaker at the end. When I note falling, I could catch the beginning. Their movement of air not strong enough. Slowly, even at the end of the rising, the abdomen doesn't fall immediately. I notice. Doesn't fall immediately. Then stop for a moment, just a little bit. Then I notice the abdomen falls. At the beginning of the falling, the movement is not strong. Then slowly getting stronger. Then at the end of the falling, the motion getting weaker. Sometimes I notice at the end of the rising, something pushing up. At the end, I could feel there is tightness at the end of the rising. At the end of the falling, yogis they report. So you see very clearly in your stomach, in your abdomen. Then some yogis they mentioned, I could not see the form, only I could feel the movement. When I know the rising and falling, suddenly I am aware there is heat or warm in my hand, but I could not see my hand. I could not see my hand touching place, but I feel. Yogis they report their experience. In this way, yogis they understand more clearly. That's why what we are told, note it closely. As long as you could note the object closely, you could notice clearly, more and more clearer you could notice. So you understand mind and matter in the rising and falling. In the same way, when you note right step, left step, right step, left step closely, you could notice if the mind could follow the movement. If you understand what I'm explaining in the rising and falling, you would understand in the walking meditation. The noting right step, left step is the mind. The footstep is the metta. Right step or left step is the metta. Then you could notice at least swinging or motion or movement. Don't look at any other things in the walking meditation. I can't see any things in the rising, in the footstep. Sometimes yogis, they are looking for other things. What should I see in the walking meditation? Nothing. In the walking meditation, everybody knows walking. It's nothing special, you may think. It is special, very special. If you want to know something, note it closely. Right step, left step, you have to note respectfully. If you do not respect your practice, you could not understand anything. That's why we are reminded all the times, hundreds and hundreds of times. Note it closely. So even though we are reminded, sometimes yogi is careless. It's not your mistake. You just now you have listened. We are puthojana, a lot of defilements, a lot of defilements, a lot of kilesas. Even though we try to be mindful each and every moment, we still forget. We still forget. So must pay close attention if we really want to know something, or at least swinging feeling, or motion, or movement. If you realize there is movement, my foot is moving forward, or swinging, or motion, you understand. It's not necessary to understand in detail. Not necessary, but if you are mindful closely, you will notice one day automatically. Depending on your mindfulness, depending on your energy, you will notice. The detailed understanding also is a knowledge. The roughly understanding also is a knowledge. Don't worry about it. Even though you could not see in detail, don't worry about it. But you have to practice ardently and energetically. So I will not mention in detail. In the seeing, what we are told, when we see something, note seeing closely. When we hear, note hearing closely. Smelling, tasting, touching, note. So you also understand mind and matter. Mind and matter. In the seeing, the sight of visible object, eyes, is a rupa. Or when you see the sight, you note seeing. Or noting is the mind. When you note hearing, the sound that your ear sense is rupa. Noting is the mind. So this is dhamma and rupa. You how to say, distinguish clearly. If you notice it closely, you would notice clearly. Then smelling, tasting, touching is the same. Then I have to explain only the rising and falling, how you distinguish, how you discern cause and effect. Cause and effect. Not any other things. Because we know the rising and falling all the time, whenever we practice sitting meditation. If you that's why I say, I do encourage yogis who practice in breath in, breath out, to note the rising, falling carefully. I have encouraged many yogis. Sometimes they simply say, I could not see the rising, falling, because previously I note the breathe in, breathe out. It's so difficult. No, it's not so difficult. Yes, I know it's quite difficult if you start one method. But doesn't mean that you must not breathe in, breathe out, because the Buddha taught us breathe in, breathe out, anapanasati. But if you practice the four foundations of mindfulness with us, you have to note rising, falling. We teach the rising, falling of the abdomen as our late most venerable Master Sayadaw taught. When we explain how yogis experience insight knowledges, we give the example, the rising and falling of the abdomen. So if you note breathe in, breathe out, you do not experience anything and the rising and falling, then you also may think, what Sayadaw is talking about? I do not understand. Air element, water element, I don't understand. You may think. So if you practice rising, falling, if I explain, you would accept because you have experienced. You have experienced. So I say, don't worry, even though you practice in out. So at the beginning, pay attention to the rising and falling. Note it closely. You should have willingness to be able to note the rising and falling closely. While you are noting the rising and falling carefully, when the mind goes back to your nostril, don't worry about it. Just note a few breaths in out, then you will realize you are noting your main object is the rising and falling. Then go back to the rising and falling. Go back. Note the rising and falling. Then when the mind goes back to the nostril, note again right and out, a few breaths, then go back to the rising and falling. In this way, training your mind, sooner or later, you are able to note the rising and falling of the abdomen. Many yogis, with my encourage, eventually they could note rising and falling of the abdomen. Even myself, when we were young, our teacher taught us the meditation. I started to note the in out because my teacher, the first teacher, very beginning, the young teacher, in my young age, he taught what they call in Burma Sayadaw method. Now it is the outsiders, they know the Goenka method in out for 3 days. So when I was 18, I practiced under the guidance of Master Sayadaw, under our Sayadaw U Pannathami. So the same thing, the mind goes back to the nostril. So I have to change. When we know the rising falling, we can understand so many things. Now you are noting the rising falling closely, but your understanding is different. Your understanding is different. Noting closely the rising and falling. Unexpectedly, you might be aware of breathing. Some yogis, they also reported in their practice, while I am noting the rising and falling, I become aware of my breathing. There are two things, breathing. Oh, this is your experience. Your experience. Of breathing, the rising, falling, not by itself. Because of the breathing, rising, falling, what? Appear. If there is no rising, falling, if there is no breathe in, breathe out, there won't be no rising and falling. Am I right? Wrong or right? Right. I want to hear. Am I right or wrong? Right. Why you say right? Because you have experienced. You are noting, you are watching all the time. You are watching, that's why. You have experienced. If you do not experience, you won't say, I'm right. So, you discern cause and effect. Some yogis, they report, when I note the rising, falling, I could not see the rising, falling. Did you see that? I could not see the rising, falling. If you do not see the rising, falling, do you know the rising, falling? You do not. You do not. Because there is no rising, falling movement. Why you know the rising, falling? Because of the rising, falling. You note. If there is no rising, falling, you do not know the rising, falling. Oh. This also is a cause and effect. Cause and effect. So in this way, yogis, discern cause and effect. Cause and effect. Very simple instruction, but understanding is very deep. Understanding is very deep. Not only that, just now I said, when you are practicing, if there's no food in your stomach, you also hear the sound in your intestine, then you note hearing. Why you not hearing? Because there is sound. There is sound. So in this way, you discern cause and effect. Now the time is 8 o'clock. Tomorrow I have to continue, but still need to explain how our yogis have experienced mind and matter and cause and effect. I also like to explain, just now I explained briefly how yogis understand 4 elements. Then I have to explain 5 aggregates. In the singer of the rising, there are 5 aggregates. If you could note closely, there are 5 aggregates in the singer of the falling. There are 5 aggregates in the singer of the seeing, if you could note. There are 5 aggregates in the stepping, right step, left step, or lifting, placing, lifting, pushing forward, placing. You have experienced with your own practice. Nobody tell you. The Buddha also taught, just now I said, Ehipasika, do come practice, you will comprehend clearly. So tomorrow I have to continue. I would like to tell our yogis, because very soon our retreat is going to finish. What for you practice meditation? To understand the teachings of the Buddha clearly, or you just test the Dhamma. If you test the Dhamma, it's up to you. I will not say anything, but I, with good intention, I just help yogis. If you want to know something about the Dhamma clearly, if you want to experience, just now I said, the Kalyana Puthojana, understand the Dhamma clearly, and want to understand the teachings of the Buddha correctly, you have very good teachers here. You cannot find easily so many teachers. They could guide you. They could teach you. They could teach you what the Buddha taught. Then when I give a talk, you hear all the time Pali words. That means I have the reason, That means I do not teach the Dhamma with my own idea. I teach the Dhamma what my teachers teach. Because I believe, I trust my teachers, they teach what the Buddha taught. They do not give you wrong information. We are so scared to give you the wrong information. Trying to teach as correct as the Buddha taught, what our teacher teach. Because our world have so many ideas. So many ideas sometimes make us confusion, Confusion. Sometimes I met, I practice like this. Then sometimes I also, sorry to say, because if I tell something, my how to say, talking may harm to others. I don't want to do like this. That's why only I just remind. So you should practice under a guidance what you like, then practice until you benefit in the Dharma. Then if you have experienced, you will not change your knowledge. Now, yes, noting rising, falling in the body, sitting, touching, right step, left step. I have experienced 4 elements. 4 elements. The Buddha also taught 4 elements. So you have confidence with your practice. So if somebody says, you will not say it's not true, then you have to experience. You have to experience 4 elements, 5 aggregates. That's why practice until you benefit something in a good guidance. Because our world is many ideas. Ideas make us confusion. Tomorrow I will continue to explain how yogis have experienced 5 aggregates. If I have the time, Noble Eightfold Paths, the 7 factors of enlightenment, if I have the time. So today is enough. May you be well and happy. May you be able to practice meditation ardently and energetically. Then may you understand the Dhamma clearly as they really are.